Well, I'm just in the town of Agde. It's one of the oldest towns in France. It goes back to the 5th century BC. It was a Greek colony originally, and is a port city on the Mediterranean. It connects the Canal du Midi to the Hérault River. The canal then goes up to the Garonne River and connects to Bordeaux, and I'll be heading up there over the next few days. Quite a bustling little place, lots of Greek era statues around. This lady, I think that's Agatha, looking down on us all. I'm going to see if I don't get lost too much as I try and find the canal, and then pedal my way up the waterway. This is one of the locks on the Canal du Midi. It's quite a fascinating piece of engineering if you're interested in those things. It was the Canal du Midi was built in the 1660s to connect the Atlantic Ocean with the Mediterranean Sea. It was a big dream of France, as they'd been at war with Spain for pretty much most of the century, and this way they could ship goods down to the Mediterranean without going around Spain. And they used it pretty much for 2 centuries before the Industrial Revolution came along and brought along a much faster train. I have to say though, cycling it so far has not been fun. I had thought there would be a well-paved cycleway, and I'm the last person to complain about how bad the cycleway is, but it's been more of a BMX track so far. Pretty hostile. Hopefully it will get a little bit better soon. Just have a look at this. What a disgrace of a cycle path. This is how it's been for the last 20 kilometres. You know who did this? Farmers driving their tractors. How totally irresponsible. And other cyclists who just make it worse. Look at this guy, pedalling away, digging up the ground, making a nuisance. This fellow as well. You have to be a very tolerant person to cope with this terrain. And look, here we go, another culprit right there. And just behind me is the town of Béziers. It's even older than Agde. The Greeks occupied this town around 575 BC. It was also known to the Romans. Some wine from this area has been uncovered by archaeologists in Rome. Obviously a good party town. Wasn't a party town in the 13th century when the Catholics decided that the particular sect in Béziers were heretics, so they massacred them and burned down their cathedral. So this building here dates from, that's the rebuild in the 13th century. Well, today has been a bit of a frustrating day on the bike. At some point this evening, my front light came loose, which isn't ideal. And I kept going the wrong way and found out kilometres later that I was heading in the wrong direction, and that often took me up steep hills that were entirely unnecessary. I did get to visit a Gaul village. The Gauls were pushed out by the Romans, of course, if anyone's read Asterix. but I was so annoyed at having gone there unnecessarily, I didn't bother making a video of it. What else? I've ended up wild camping again, and that is because the municipal camping site is closed tonight. I think it's legal. There was a young couple a couple of 100 metres down on the same side of the canal who were just setting up tent. So hopefully if the Rozzers come along, they get arrested first. Well, I've just paused briefly after stopping for lunch a few minutes ago for a very traditional French burger in a cafe rather than a fast food place. I'm just at one of the major locks along the Canal du Midi. It's hard to underestimate just what a huge achievement this was. They knocked it off in 15 years. When you think it's 10 times longer than Transmission Gully, and they did it in a fifth of the time more than 300 years ago. That's what you can do if you don't have a Resource Management Act to deal with. Today has been pretty challenging. On one side of the canal here, the route is very treacherous. Sometimes you have to flip side by side, but I was bushwhacking through some terrain for about 5 kilometres, which slowed me right down and made me think that cycling is just not a good idea. Well, I'm at the hottest time of the day. It's now 28 degrees. I've run out of water, and about the only upside is that I didn't do this part in June when it would be 40 degrees. Fortunately, I'm not completely unprepared, because the two things you need on a hot day are water and sugar. This was my favourite drink when I was in New Caledonia. The last time I went cycling too, more than 30 years ago. And there's a reason for that, because cycling's pretty terrible. I've got about 19 kilometres to go. Google Maps says that'll take me an hour 10, but in my experience, even if I follow every direction Google gives me, it'll take me a couple of hours. There's quite a bit of climbing to do, and I think I just have to get as much fluid in me now before I get to my campsite. For the first time, I have booked a campsite in advance, so I've got no choice. I have to be there by 7 p.m, otherwise reception closes and I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere. So, quick stop, then I'll see you when I arrive. So, first things first, I've arrived at my campsite, which actually opened today for the year. So I was lucky. I wasn't lucky, however, with Google Maps that decided to send me up a mountain bike track and then down again. I'm not sure which was worse. They were both pretty monstrous for the last 5, 6, 7 kilometres. Not pleasant, but I did manage to get here on time and checked in, and it turns out I'm the only one in the whole campsite who is camping. There's about 150 tent pitches along here. So the lady at the reception was very nice to me. And I've got a bit of time up my sleeve. I need to pitch my tent. I don't really want to cook, but I didn't cook last night. All I had was a couple of lollies and I've only had a burger at lunchtime, and I think I was feeling a bit rough this morning because I didn't have enough calories in me. So we'll see how the evening progresses and whether I can be bothered to do anything tonight. Well, I had planned to make a delicious meal of coq au vin tonight, but for some reason I don't think I got the right gas canister. It says only use Decathlon gas canisters, and this is a Camping Gas, which might be why it doesn't quite work. So I do have some biscuits in my bag. That may have to be what I have for dinner. I've got all the implements except the right gas canister. So the fancy meal at the campsite will have to wait for another night. So, status report. I have my wine. I've had some biscuits, and I'm thinking about the meal that I would have had if I had the right gas canister. I'm going to go to Decathlon tomorrow, get the right gas canister, and the meal I have in mind will wow everybody. I also need a new mattress, maybe an inflatable one, because the one I've got at the moment is quite terrible.